I am bearish on crypto. No, I'm not. Just kidding. But I do think, given how much of a perma bull I've been this entire cycle, that I should explore the other side and view the bearish biases that I have, because I do have some. And with that context, it can help better prepare us for this final run where we can then exercise the proper risk management. You'll see exactly what it is I mean, so make sure you watch until the end, because I'll be exploring everything that is bearish about Bitcoin and crypto, and then giving my overall thoughts on how I think this cycle ends, given the bullish and now the bearish case. So let's get started. This cycle, we had 4 pumps, meaning we've had 3 breaks of highs. The first pump was when we bottomed in 2022 and got up to around 30k, right? We then ended up ranging there for a large part of 2023, and then we broke that high. Once we broke that high, we put in a top at 74k. That was 137%. Then we had pretty much the same thing in 2024, where we chopped for a very long time. But again, we broke that high and put in a run that was a 48% gain. Let's call it 50. We got up to around 110. Now, a drop off from 137 to 50%, it's not that big a deal. It's acceptable. But then this year, we had another dip and then another run. If you recall on the channel, I was saying this was going to happen, and I was calling this a run. Well, unfortunately, this run so far has only eclipsed the previous high by 14%. This is not bullish price action. In fact, you can argue it's quite distributive. If crypto is known for having overextension on its final run, then Bitcoin should have gained a lot more dollar units to the upside. Now, it does still have a chance to do that. Bitcoin right now is at 109k. But the main reason I'm making this video is because I don't want us dipping much lower. So going back to that bearish idea, if I zoom in and if you look at Bitcoin, at the end of last year we topped. We got a small dip and we put in a double top. I've highlighted the double top in orange. We then break down, right? Bitcoin gives up a lot of gains, puts in a pretty fat dip. Not a huge deal, because if it recovered that dip, which it did, it could have then put in a pretty impressive run above this previous high. And the impulse we had out of 74k was actually pretty decent. But this is where things kind of turn ugly. From May to July, we ended up getting multiple swipes of the previous high, again and again and again. It was bearish because we weren't breaking above it, but also bullish because we kept tapping against it. Then finally, we broke above it. But with breaking above it, again, we only put in a 14% run above the 2024 high. And now we're at those highs again. And here's why I'm saying I don't want Bitcoin to dip that much more. You see, the problem is, if Bitcoin now goes down to the 90s, can it recover out of those prices? Of course it can. But by coming down to the 90s, all of a sudden, it becomes less and less about Bitcoin breaking all-time highs the way it did a couple months ago, and more about Bitcoin just being in a range the entire time, where actually this break in all-time highs was simply a deviation, and now Bitcoin is being accepted back into this range. If we get the prices down here, I'd say the bull market is over, which is why I'm talking about this right now. Now, it is quite poetic with how tough this cycle has been, that we are pushing it to the absolute edge. Because on that same note, Bitcoin at any moment could be putting in a bottom, simply retesting this previous range before it puts in a run to 140, 150k plus. And I said this in the last video too. Make sure you're subscribed because you don't want to miss these, by the way. But I said I kind of don't want to dip that much, and I don't really understand those putting up the argument that we're going to dip down to the 90s and then recover back up. As again, I said last week, I don't know if we can afford that. I don't think Bitcoin can go below 100k again if we want this bull market to continue, if we want that strong finish in Q4. The other big problem is that momentum is really stalling out. In fact, it has been since that 74k top. We had that 74k top and RSI getting up here. But then on that top late last year, the RSI made a lower high. And then on our recent top, the the RSI made a lower high yet again, which is why in my opinion, I kind of feel like Bitcoin should have just not made an all-time high then. I would have rather had this entire year be like how the previous 2 years were, where we just kind of chopped and then made that run in Q4, right? That happened in 2023. And that happened in 2024. And say whatever you want, but there were some pretty decent altcoin seasons at the ends of those years. But with price action breaking above all-time highs, and volume and momentum not matching it, it's like another shot in the foot. And speaking of alt seasons, here's another thing that's pretty bearish. The biggest alt season we had so far this cycle happened on the first run. In 2023 to 2024, a lot of alts went crazy. That was when something like Fetch went up 1500%. Something like Bonk went up 27,000%. This was the best altcoin season so far this cycle. And then on that second break of highs last year with the Trump pump, we got another alt season. And that too was a pretty decent one. We had big caps like XRP put in 500% moves. But this all-time high break we had a couple months ago was probably one of the worst for altcoins. Now, don't get me wrong, there is still a lot of opportunity, which a lot of these opportunities I present in my Discord service. Even though this recent run went up 14%, I gave the likes of Fartcoin, which went from 20 cents to $1.60, the likes of ETH, which went from 1,400 to 5,000, the likes of Hype, which went from 20 bucks and then 12 bucks up to 60. And the most recent call being Aster, which I first gave at 40 cents and then 90 cents, and it getting up to so far a top of $2.30, but I have a good feeling that after it puts in whatever dip it does, it probably gets more than that. And during the literal recording of this video, I'm giving many more calls for the final run of this cycle, as I do think we continue upward. Opportunities of 3, 4, 5x's and beyond from the literal price points of today. If you need help getting those types of gains, then make sure to check out the Discord. There is a link in the description. Even though everything I said applies, there still is specific plays that you can get. It's all in there, where ultimately we'll then be shifting to a selling focused type of ideology. So if you also need help with selling and trying to make the most out of the end of this cycle, not trying to bag hold yet again, and you need direct help, that is also available. But that is more of an individual sort of thing, right? Where you're in a community. But overall, for people that have just been holding, playing the general trend and not getting help, this is where things lie. Even though on this 14% pop up, Fartcoin did an 8x and the ETH we gave did a 3x, most alts on this pump did awful. So many coins that did not pump. So on every single one of these runs, altcoin performance is getting worse and worse. And now for this final run, the ability to be in the right coins is even more important. But with all that being said now, where do we stand and what do we want to make sure this happens? September was not the month to make all-time highs. Even though we had great launches you could have taken advantage of. Again, like that Aster type of play, we weren't looking for that. Right now what we want is a green close for September. It opened at 108k. We're at 109. There's 2 days left after this video comes out. If we close green, I think we're good. But the most important thing is this actually. I don't think we dump now. This is not what I'm worried about. What I'm more worried about is this. So let's say in Q4, we get a run up. I don't know if it's going to happen in October, November, or December. But whenever that break of high occurs and then we roll back under the previous high, that is the real scare. What number is Bitcoin going to top at before it goes under the previous high? Because if we get up to a measly 132k before we roll under, that's not ideal. That is actually what I'm more nervous about versus dumping straight up now. So let the market do what it wants to do. Coil up all the momentum it needs, because once it breaks highs, we're gonna need it. I'm hoping for at least 140, 150k plus. It could even happen in October. Then I expect alts to do well. At the very least, a match of maybe what we got at the end of last year, where alts did about a 3x on average. That is sort of what I expect on the lower end, and on the higher end, I expect what we got in the last 2 cycles. If we get something in between, I'm sure most will be happy. So right now, your job, watch out for Bitcoin. Let's hope we don't break any significant levels. Have your bags packed. Make sure they're high conviction bets. Again, if you need help with that, join the Discord. Link is in the description. And then once we break all-time highs, get ready to shift into that selling type of mindset. I will be here along the way, so make sure to like and subscribe. I've been posting a lot more often, like I told you I would, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.